Yes, I can.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I don't need to use my earphones.
No, it's all right.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect.
You might just need to turn your camera on.
Hold on 1 second. So we are also...
Hello, yes.
Okay, good. Okay,
How are you
guys.
doing, sir? Yes.
I'm very good.
Thanks for taking time out. It's
Listen,
obviously an honor to host you.
It's good. How long will it take?
Around 1 hour.
Okay,
I can talk to you for 10 hours, but I'll only take 1 hour.
You don't know, eh? You don't know my answer yet. How's everything over there?
Everything is going good. The virus obviously has spread a lot, so we're all very careful. How about in Amsterdam?
Yeah, it's getting a lot better, of course. Eh? Slowly but surely, everything goes open again. But you know, you need to be very disciplined because you need to keep the distance and all of that. But you know, the amount of death and the amount of infections is going low quickly, which is good. So now it's like, you know, there are some protesting, of course, you know, like what happened in the US. They're also protesting in different countries. They basically do the same in Holland. So we need to see what the consequences are when too many people are too close. They did it once in Amsterdam, and so it's like a week ago. So we have to see how that goes. All the other protesting, they keep the distance and stuff like that. So that's good.
Yes. Yeah, that's really good. Has the Eredivisie started or has it ended?
Say it again.
The Dutch League.
No, it's interesting because I basically do everything outside of Holland. I do nothing inside of Holland anymore.
Oh,
so
okay.
The Dutch League will start September 1.
The next season.
Yeah, which is a little bit of a mistake because you know that, you know, England will start. Germany started already like more than 2 weeks ago. Spain started, you know, like yesterday. And I see that all the competitions are starting. So the feeling now is that they said too quick that they will play, you know, September the 1st. So it's strange. It's strange. But I'm working also with a club in Orange County, in California. I'm more or less the technical director there, and they start again July 11.
Okay, that's
which is
great.
good. And Japan, you know, I do a big project with Japan. How far is that from you guys?
About 10 to 12 hours flight.
That's far, eh? But in what part of the federations are you guys? You are in the Asia part?
Asia.
Okay, because I did like, you know, a few months ago, something in Singapore for the Asian Federation, AFC. And I think I met some people from Pakistan as well.
All right.
So,
we're more part of Southeast Asia.
Say it again?
We're more part of Southeast Asia.
You are too far, guys. Your distances in Asia are too big. I mean, I thought that in Europe it's big, but there's nothing. It's really nothing. You know, but that's okay as long as we are enjoying it. And you know, I've been in Hong Kong, you know, and I was like really impressed by the big name of United there. You know, basically, you cannot imagine that it's that big in Asia. It's amazing. I mean, and what the people know, and of course you all see like the Premier League, and you're waiting, of course, for the next games there. It's like it's crazy. It's like I never experienced that in my life. And also how loyal the people are. It's also amazing because, you know, the 2 years in United, I mean, they were not always having fun if they watched the game. A lot of times they didn't, but they were always behind the team. And to be honest, many other big clubs, you know, they show that they don't like what they see, which is okay, because they can do that. I think they have the right. But you know, in United, it's very loyal. It's almost unnatural, too loyal.
That's really good to hear. Obviously, we've been an official supporters club in Pakistan here for 6 years. And we only recently started to hopefully start to bring in big names like yourself on the show so that our Pakistani fan base can be educated And obviously you worked with so many big clubs and you have so much experience. So obviously we are trying to count on that experience during this call and hopefully learn a lot from you as well about United and in football in general.
Good. So tell me when you start, eh?
Okay, so any topics you wouldn't like us to discuss, or everything is okay?
You know a little bit what you guys would like to know, and I will
Yes.
try to give the answers as as honest as I can. If there are things which are difficult, I will explain that why it's difficult, because I think people always have a right to know that as well. To be honest.
Yes, of course, no worries. Okay, I'll introduce you to the people in this call. Trad Israr, Hassan Hussein, and Daniel Ali is also with us. So obviously, I was messaging you. Daniel is, I think his video is off. I was messaging you on.
Okay.
I was messaging you on Twitter, and Hassan will introduce himself while I connect to the live session.
Hi, Frans. Welcome and thank you for taking the time out and coming to speak to us. Absolute honor. When we think about where all you've worked and your history in football, for us it's like it's amazing. It's like we're being in a candy store, and of course you're all the candy, so the pressure is there. But thank you so much.
No problem. You're very welcome.
Like Ismail said, the game is growing in Pakistan slowly. We're also now getting a lot of young people in Europe from Pakistani backgrounds who are now, getting involved or playing. Our national team right now has 8 people who were originally born and raised in Europe of Pakistani parents. I think one of them even plays in Holland, mostly from Denmark, Belgium, Scandinavia. So the game is really growing here, and there's a lot of desire to learn, but somehow the people in charge, they don't want to teach. They just want FIFA gives them the money and they're like, hey, look, there's a football, isn't that nice? And that's it. They don't want to work, and we kind of have to do a lot of work ourselves. So for young people in Pakistan to learn from you, to just hear you guys, it's really good. Hopefully we can inspire someone.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to do that. By the way, is the Wi-Fi connection okay, or do I need to make it stronger?
No, it's good.
No, it's good.
It's fine.
Yeah. Okay,
it's
good.
Better than ours.
I'm at my house. I'm not, in my office. In my office, then I can wire it easy. But okay, if the Wi-Fi is good, we leave it.
You're okay. I think it's a lot better than what we're used to in Pakistan.
Good.
With the Wi-Fi. Good. So I think Ismail is just going to connect us to Facebook.
Facebook.
Yes,
and we're on now. Okay. So
just 1 second. Okay, yeah, it's live now. So hello, my name is Ismail, and today I have with us a football legend and obviously the best goalkeeping coach of the modern era, Frans Hoek. And we are obviously delighted to host him. And I have with myself, Tarad, Hassan, and Daniel as well. So Frans, if I could go first, I wanted to ask something that obviously De Gea came to United in 2010. And he was shaky at the start. And then when you with Van Gaal came along to United, he obviously had his best patch at United. So what did you suddenly change in him that he became the world's best goalkeeper at that time?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. And of course, the player himself always has to do the job. But, it always helps when people help you, to reach your personal highest level. So actually, the moment we came, it was known when we were in the preparation for the World Cup that we would go to United. So there was almost all the attention had to go to the Dutch national team because we had to go to Brazil, play the World Cup. Of course, we know in the world of football who are in the big teams and stuff like that. But to have a very clear opinion, you first need to see many games that has been played, so you get an idea how good somebody is or what are weak points and strong points and things like that. So that was also one of the things that, of course, I did in this case with the goalkeepers that were available at United at the moment. To make it a little bit clear to you, my responsibility, I have my coach license. So basically I'm a coach I'm an assistant coach, but I'm a specialist in goalkeeping and a specialist in the set pieces. Okay, over the years, I developed that, and that's what, you know, that's what my specialization is. So going back to the goalkeeping part, so you start to analyze that. Then I knew, of course, how we would like to play as a team with United. And then you see, okay, do you see possibilities that somebody can play that, you know, in the building up, but also in, you know, the defensive part and stuff like that. So you first, you know, you get a picture of how somebody is working, is performing till that moment. Then the next step is that you actually are going to work with that person. Yeah, because everything you did before is from the outside, and now you go to the inside. And what is incredibly important to work with, in this case, the goalkeeper or the goalkeeper, De Gea, the basic talent they have, well, and I could see the talent he had, in my opinion, what I've been seeing in all the clips was more than enough to play for United in all areas. And I also saw that his reach, which means, you know, the area he covers with shots and stuff like that, I've never seen it in my life. And he is not the tallest in the world, but, you know, he is like, his reach is incredible. Then a part of that, it's about coachability, it's about drive. So does somebody has the drive and the ambition to become better? Because if that's not existing, forget about it. You can only do what you do and stay where you are. The third area is discipline on the pitch, off the pitch. And we all know the examples of players that were fantastic on the pitch, but, you know, outside the pitch didn't have the life of a professional player that you need to have to stay on the top, and to be there and stay there. And the last part is coachability. That means, are you willing to learn, to improve, and maybe a little bit different than what you are used to? Every coach that comes in brings his own way of thinking, methodology, and his own vision. And the strange thing is, like with goalkeepers, and especially goalkeeper coaches, if you have 1,000 coaches, they all have their own way of thinking and their own way of doing. If we look at the coaches that are, you know, having the team, it's not that diverse as what you see, for example, with goalkeeper coaches. What my philosophy has been, basically, the moment that I started to coach, that the game is my teacher, nothing else. So I analyze the game, I see what the game brings, I have a picture of what is ideal and how close can you come to that. Or if you cannot improve it, you have to accept it and you have to work around it. Okay. And then the other thing is, okay, if you want that, what is your methodology? What is the road you take to improve? And a big part at top level for me is integrated with the team. In my opinion, you only can learn the game by playing the game. And the game is always with, you know, I have 10 teammates. I play against 11, a pitch in a certain size. You have the referee, you have the rules. And to become better, that's the place where you have to show it. So when you go to the practice field, immediately that practice has to be as close as possible to the 11 versus 11. So it's logical. I mean, if you listen to me and you hear this, I don't think you say, hey, what you say now is strange. I think it's very logical. In my world of, and especially the goalkeeping world, a lot of people say they think like that, but they act a little bit differently. And that's interesting because you always have to be open what happens. So going back to, in this case, De Gea, but over the year, you know, we changed pretty much all the goalkeepers who were there at that moment. And that's not that it comes out of the air, but it's like analyzing clearly, what are they capable of doing? What do we need? Can we improve that, yes or no? And if that's difficult, or the motivation is not there, or they want to play, whatever it is, then you have to find solutions. But back to David. David had a little bit a difficult start, also with us. The first few games he played were not his best games. He was not like bad, but not his best games. We had the World Cup, of course. We came in and started to work basically immediately. We had one day in Holland, we came to the UK and we started to work immediately. David came in a little bit later because he also had the World Cup. But it was very clear for me, you have to get used to each other. I always say you don't need to be friends. I don't want to be friends. I want them to perform at the highest personal level. That means they need to trust me. So you need to have a trustworthy relationship. And trustworthy for me is being open and honest. And what I found with David was that, what I saw in the clips is what I could see that he could perform. It's only a matter of being consistent in the performance. I always say it's better to have the whole season to be consistent 7, 8, than one time have a 10, other time have a 3 and stuff like that. So you work to consistency. And that was one thing that, that we could really work on and improve. And what I saw was, he had a very good self-picture. So he didn't think that he was performing fantastic when his performance was average. And it's difficult for some people. So what I saw is, hey, this guy realizes when he is doing it very good, and maybe a little bit less good. So that was a very good start, and then, you start to work in a very structural way, which was a little bit difficult for David than he was used to, but he was very willing to learn and to go on with that, because you also have to trust each other. And of course, he already had a certain level, but we wanted to have the very best out of him. And that always depends on the player himself. So from that moment on, it was intense, because what a lot of people think, okay, they go out to practice and they go home and that's it. But that's not the life of a pro at this moment anymore. It's really, they get in like between 8 and 9 in the morning. So, they get some tests. It's about the food. It's about working on some areas also in the weight room. You go out on the pitch. You make a program based on the needs of the team, needs of the individual player. And then after that, it's a lot of also watching videos. Okay, so what I made for the United was a profile for the Manchester United goalkeeper based on the way how we wanted to play. So I made that profile, and that's like, it's like 30 pages of profile with all actions that you can see in the game, all actions. And I described that, and from the description also like an evaluation form. So the goalkeepers had to fill that out themselves. And it was like, I'm good, I'm reasonable, and I'm not so good. So, and then based on that, I did fill it out, what I thought, what I saw, and then we were sitting together, watching clips of the specific goalkeeper, and then draw our conclusions. And with the conclusions, that was the base to start working with each other. But again, I only want to be a help. It's their program, it's their problem, and I'm like helping them to solve the problems and to become better. So that was the intense way of working. So we did, for example, in the beginning, after every game, it was more than an hour evaluation of all the game moments. Okay, so that's a lot. And only the game moments where the goalkeeper was involved. And I did that with all the goalkeepers that were like touching the first team, because they all needed to understand what is the way of playing, what do we expect. And I also know what David can do, another goalkeeper is different, so they have to fill it out in a different way. So it's very structural work, and you've seen in the end that we have been incredibly happy these 2 years with the level that David reached, because to be in the UK, play every 3 days, and every 3 days it's really a tough game. It doesn't matter against who you play, whether it's the FA Cup, whether it's like whatever the other cup, it was the Milk Cup or whatever the name was, the league. But you also had, like Champions League, you also had, they all play in the national teams. So they play so many games. So it's very important to plan it in a very good way that they are there at the right moment. And the level that David reached, and I can only talk about these 2 years, it was like an incredibly high level. He was very decisive in winning games, which basically is not good, because the goalkeeper, in the way of playing that we do it, should not have been making that many saves, but he did. And on the other way, he was a very consistent goalie, and he also was in the build-up very good. Also, and nobody noticed that, of course, David has had some times that he was a little bit less. But then it's like, it's beautiful if you can cover that up, that nobody sees it, and he still can have a high level. And it was work, it was hard work, and it was consistent work, and it was being on top of it every day. And yeah, the response was what we have seen in the games, which is the only way where you can evaluate it, that's in the games. So I hope it's like, it's a big answer, I know, but you know, it's not a
very
yes or no
informative.
answer. There's a lot of things involved there.
No, I can completely understand. Obviously, you've talked about the evolving keepers. I just wanted to ask a short question that De Gea came on the verge of leaving Manchester United in 2014, obviously under yourself. Can you give us a few names that were targeted in that summer window as a potential? Can you give us a few names as a potential replacement that you guys considered for De Gea when he wanted to go to Real Madrid?
Well, first of all, you know that when we left United, we had David as a goalkeeper. We had Sergio Romero as a goalkeeper. We had Sam Johnston as a goalkeeper. We had Joel Pereira as a goalkeeper and Dean Henderson. So what you could see was, it was a good mix of young building up till old. And I think till this moment, still David and also Sergio, we have seen that they are very reliable. On the other side, we have seen that, for example, Dean Henderson has gone on loan to Sheffield United. Last year, great season. This year, great season. So he could be a potential guy for United in the future. We've seen Joel Pereira, who was then the number 4. He has been on loan as well, but was not, let us say, that lucky to be at a team like Sheffield, who really improved a lot, and they play fantastic football, and there's a good schwung in the team. That's also good for the goalkeeper, in this case, Dean Henderson. So I think that the group of goalkeepers that I know that they have at this moment, well, it's more than good enough for United. And if you say, hey, who could replace him? That's a question that you asked me.
I wanted to ask that in 2015, when he wanted to leave, when the transfer request failed. So were you looking at any potential replacements for him back then? Citizen was rumored, yes.
I know, yeah, there were many rumors. And but what I can tell you is this. Number one, again, open and honest. You know, when Madrid came in the picture, I spoke, of course, with David. Said, David, okay, how is the situation? And David told me, that, you know, I love it at United, but on the other side, you know, Madrid is my home. My girlfriend is there. Real Madrid is a big team. So yes, I'm interested in that. And then I said to him, okay, just keep me informed. I mean, I talked about motivation and drive. If a player really wants to leave, and I think it would have been a pity for us, of course, but on the other side, I understood his part of the story. And when you are at a top club, you always need to have minimum of 5 possible replacements. That's my opinion. So from the moment when I came there, I started, you know, to look for always for replacements, being the number 1 maybe, or being the number 2 maybe, and even, you know, in the younger group. I think when you are working with a team like United, the big teams in the world, you need to be very clear about number 1 till number 5. Okay, so, and I know also the number 1 alone is not enough. You need to have very good people behind him also to help each other, push each other, and stuff like that. So yes, I started to scout, of course, immediately. And when you are at United, basically your scouting area is the whole world, which means you can look at every big team in the world and you can put the names of these guys on the list. So there were like, you know, a few big guys that are still playing now, guys like Neuer, guys like Ter Stegen, Oblak, these guys. Yeah. But Oblak, to be honest, was not in the first 2 or 3 because he is exceptional good in stopping shots. But his building up is less than Ter Stegen and is less than Neuer, for example. But you know, we made a list, and that was a list with known goalkeepers that everybody can put on the list. But there was also a list of less known goalkeepers that were also possibilities. What you always have to look at is you need, in my opinion, you need to have a little bit of competition. For example, David is almost never hurt. You know, he's very stable, physically very strong, very good, and he is hardly injured. But if he is injured, you need a replacement and that you don't drop too much back. That's very important. And even the number 2 can get injured or he can get, you know, like a red card. So you always need to be ready to have potential candidates that can take over without that you lose too much. You always lose normally something, but you should not lose too much. So this means there's a lot of work behind the number 1. And if I say now, for example, Dean Henderson, Dean was then 18 years of age. Had potential, but if he should have been in the first team at that moment, for him it would have been a very big step. And then the chance that you will succeed is like 50-50. But if you do it with Sergio Romero, I knew that the chance that it would go okay was almost 90%. Okay, so you always have to calculate how big is the chance that something will work out, yes or no. And based on that, you make your decisions.
Okay, so you've spoken about the evolution of goalkeepers, obviously. And Tarad would like to ask a question about the evolution of goalkeepers that you've had to face so far.
Yeah, Frans, I'd like to ask that in recent times, just because you mentioned it, and I also had this plan. We've seen that the goalkeeper role has evolved from just being a shot stopper to somebody who's actively involved in build-up play, and you need to be able to play build up from the backline and play the ball out rather than just clearing it. So how has goalkeeping evolved into such a way? What were the prime factors that manager decided or somebody decided that, you know, goalkeepers should be good with their feet and not just their hands as well? And what influenced this role? And my question is in 2 parts. I'd also like to add that in recent times, we've seen that the football itself has evolved. The Jabulani ball and all the balls that are being made right now, they produce a lot of movement inside the air because they can dip a lot, they can move a lot, they can swerve a lot. So how have goalkeepers, you know, compensated for this new change in the game?
It's a lot of questions, you know that. But okay.
Yeah.
But I take your first question about goalkeepers playing with their feet. Well, first of all, we have to go back to the change of the pass-back rule, 92. Okay, so when the pass-back rule changed into what it is today, that was an immense change. Okay, till that moment, the more traditional goalkeepers, and I talk about Peter Schmeichel, Oliver Kahn, that kind of goalkeepers were excellent in doing the defensive job, the 1-versus-1, the shots, the crosses. And when they had the ball in their possession, they could throw it. Schmeichel was like, he gave assists, they could score out of his throw. And kicking was basically based on power, you know, and when you had that, you couldn't discover a weak point. But everything changed with the passback, because when you now play a passback to the type of Oliver Kahn and Schmeichel in these days, these guys were not used, you know, in receiving the passback and play as a player. They were not used to that at all. And it was not needed because, you know, the game they played was a completely different game than what happened after that. So when that happened and that's said, you always look as a team, how can we have an advantage, you know, with the goalkeeper receiving the ball? And also when the goalkeeper of the other side received the ball, how can we take an advantage out of it? I was lucky that I was coaching at Ajax. The style of play of the Dutch since '74 has been different than normally how the other teams played in the world. We always played with a big space behind the defense. For goalkeepers, it seemed it's very difficult to defend these space. Lots of the traditional goalkeepers, they love to defend their goal on the line. They don't feel too comfortable to get off that line. But we needed a goalkeeper that was basically comfortable to get off that line. In history, what I saw was that goalkeepers that has a lot of insight in the game, which means they could play the game as a player, they were in general better in leaving that line and defending that space. So '74, the Dutch national team played with Jan Jongbloed, who was basically not a goalkeeper, he was a player, you know, and they put him in the goal to only defend these spaces. And the traditional goalkeeper, and we had a few good ones then, they didn't even came in the game because they couldn't do that. So that's a little bit of the development. So in Ajax, we were lucky that we had a goalkeeper then, it was Stanley Menzo, and he was like a player. He could play in the midfield, no problems at all. So we adjusted very quick to the pass-back situation and had an advantage. Because when our goalkeeper had the ball, we played with 11 players. When the opponent goalkeeper had the ball, they played with 10 players because the goalkeeper didn't feel comfortable if the ball came back. And the only thing he did was kicked it away, and that's it. He couldn't perform in the build-up. We were lucky that we could do that. And we had like, of course, Edwin van der Sar, same. He also was like a player who became in the goal, so we had an advantage. 92. Now we talk about 2020. And that means that's like almost 30 years later. And what we see now is that the traditional goalkeeper of then, the Schmeichels, the Kahn, they basically don't exist anymore because the goalkeepers from now is a complete different goalkeeper. It's a goalkeeper that gets less job defensively than what we did in the past, but they are much more involved in the build-up. Doesn't mean you cannot be good as a traditional goalkeeper, because if your team is playing a little bit more defensively, look at Atletico de Madrid with Oblak. Oblak, of course, is basically a traditional goalkeeper who can play a little bit with his feet. But still, he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world because he plays for Atletico de Madrid. I would be curious if, for example, Oblak would play for Barcelona, in which the demands on the build-up are a lot bigger than in Atletico de Madrid. We don't know yet. Maybe he surprises us, maybe not, but we cannot check that. Yeah? I saw the game yesterday as well from Atletico de Madrid, and basically they don't really build up, if you know what I mean. So if we look at the goalkeepers now, the interesting part is, in the 90s and before, the Brazilian goalkeepers were not so good. They always said the weak point of Brazil is the goalkeeper. Nowadays, we see that the majority of world-class goalkeepers are from Brazil, which is crazy. But of course, I did study it. And if you look at, for example, Ederson with City, with Pep Guardiola, who was one of my players, you know, in Barcelona, so I know him also very good. He demands a lot from the build-up, from the goalkeeper in his way of playing. So Joe Hart, traditional goalkeeper, national team of England, did a good job. But when Pep came in, he needed to play completely different, which was, of course, not the quality of Joe. And because of that, he bought Bravo. And I think Bravo can play. Only he had a very unlucky season. And then he brings in like Ederson. If you look at Alisson, it's also a Brazilian goalkeeper. And you have a lot more of them. The reason for that can be that in Brazil, they are educated to play, not to be goalkeeper, to play the game. And from playing the game, they become a goalkeeper. And that's very interesting, because the majority of the goalkeepers I work with, they are pretty good with their feet. David de Gea is very good with his feet. Romero is very good with his feet. So for the way of playing now, it's vital that you have the feeling for playing. That also means that in many situations you read the situation better, and that makes it easier also to make saves. So you don't only react, but you also anticipate on everything what comes. By the way, before I answer your second part, I work already 6 years on a new book. And the book is basically all the experiences that I had in my career, playing, coaching, whatever it is, but it's also a scientific background, you know. So I do that together with a scientific person who was a goalkeeper as well. So we really try to analyze every game moment we see in the game, defensively, attacking, and things like that, structure that, and come up with the best solutions to make the saves and the best solutions to build up. So that will be, I think, for everybody is involved, a very interesting book, because it's not like I think it has to be done. No, it really is the way how it is. So having said that, it's interesting to see the whole development, you know, of goalkeeping in the whole world. And of course, the Premier League and the La Liga and the Bundesliga and Italian League, they are examples for the rest of the world, you know, how to develop a way of playing. And well, this means the demands, the profile of the goalkeeper now is completely different than the 90s. And the other thing is, what we also see is, it took more than 30 years to get the goalkeepers we have nowadays. And the development of the game will continue. If we look at the game, if we look how United plays, if we look at how Liverpool plays, how Tottenham plays, how City plays. So the way that you play with your club, with your team, develops and evaluate as well the game of the goalkeeper. Back to the ball, Jubilani, stuff like that. Well, what I told you before is the game dictates. So the moment the ball changes in the Jubilani or whatever it is, and I was at that moment at Bayern München. And you know that Bayern München is Adidas, and you know that the connection with Adidas is a big one. So we tested the balls as well. And what you saw was that you saw an enormous change of the road of the ball, the flight of the ball, and that it was surprisingly what happened. Having said that, you try to give the feedback and say, hey, you know, you need to know that the ball is moving a lot, the ball is going to different areas a lot. So if you want that, because they wanted more goals, that was the background also what was said, the chance that you will get more goals with this one, it's an option, especially when you shoot balls from a long distance. Everything from the short distance was no problem. But from the longer the distance, the more problems you had. So you always have to see if you can evaluate it, and then you have to find a way how to eliminate it. I'll give you another example. We play with Ajax 1995 for the World Cup in Tokyo. The year before, or 2 years before, whatever it was, I know that PSV played also in Tokyo. And Hans van Breukelen, who is, you know, he was my teammate actually, he missed a cross. He missed the cross and he said, wow, the ball did so strange. I misjudged the ball completely. I had that in the back of my mind. So when we went to Tokyo, we were there 8 days before. So I said, okay, we need the balls that we are going to play with exactly the same. Because we did bring balls, which were like the balls for the World Cup, but I wanted the balls they had there in Tokyo. And the funny thing was, they looked the same, but they were not the same. So we started practicing. Edwin was in goal and Fred Grim was there. I started practicing a lot of long balls because the ball had a different flight than with the normal ball had. And it also had to do with the air in Tokyo. You know, it was a different kind of air. So you have to practice that. You need like a different way of judging the flights of the balls. You need to give yourself more time and space, which means a different position. And the floating balls, for example, what we see a lot in goalkeeping is that goalkeepers go too early. It's a little bit gambling. They should never gamble, never. Always wait and react on the situation. No gambling. And if you do that, you will improve a lot in a very, very short time, for sure. Okay, does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely. Hassan has a question.
Yeah, Frans, I wanted to ask you that in your career, you know, you've been with Ajax, you've been with Barcelona, Manchester United, Bayern Munich. These are four of the biggest clubs in the world. Four different leagues, different countries, different cultures. Is the way the goalkeeper is seen? Like you said, in Barcelona, they like them to play with their feet. Obviously, England is a very physical league. You know, people will on the corners come and hit the goalkeepers, which we've seen sometimes is difficult for keepers from other countries because English goalkeepers grow up being kicked probably as much as the ball. And then obviously in Germany. So whenever you've gone to each of these places, have you thought to yourself that, okay, I'm going to adapt the goalkeeper's role to how it is in this culture, in this league? Or have you thought that, no, I want the goalkeeper to play the way I want them to play? And is the situation of the league or the country is not that important to us because the best way for the goalkeeper to perform is if they're doing the way you guys know they can do, the method you have for them. So does that come into your thinking that Germany is different, Holland is different, Barcelona, Spain is La Liga and Premier League are different? Do you take that into consideration every time you're in one of those places?
Well, first of all, how I want them to play, it's always what the team needs.
Yeah.
Okay? So, for example, I was in Poland, and Poland then was one of the countries that were like defending very close to the penalty box. You know, so there was a complete different way, and I was an assistant of Leo Beenhakker then, who was also Dutch. But the whole culture, of course, in Poland, different players and stuff like that. So I always have to adapt what the team needs. Right. Anyway, based on that, it's a very good question that you ask, because of course cultures are different, approaches are different, but the funny and the good thing is the game is always the same. Whether you are in Pakistan or you are in England or you are in Italy, the game is the same. And the difference is the level of the game. So the better the players, the higher the level of the league is. And we know that like the Premier League, they have basically the best players, the best coaches of the world. So it's a very high level and probably the highest level in the world. It's not a UK league, in my opinion. It's a world league, in my opinion. Based on that, what you have to do always is analyze the way of playing in that country. Okay? And you said something about England and the physical part. The only thing in England that is basically different with the other leagues is the referee. The referee allows a lot with corner kicks, with crosses and stuff like that. What you see is that they almost don't whistle. So as a goalkeeper, you know, you need to know that if they attack you or they hit you, there will not anybody there who will whistle. So I give you an example. We play against Crystal Palace for the FA Cup. You remember that? The one that we won. So we play against Crystal Palace.
The final.
I'm also the specialist in the set pieces. So, and we all know that Crystal Palace, and I also get data and I analyze every situation. You know, Crystal Palace scored most of their goals out of set pieces. So when they played against us, and we had played against them already, you know, 2 times that season and the season before as well, I knew that for them, the way to score was a set piece, nothing else. And especially out of corner kicks, and especially their number 6, Dan, was very strong. He scored 6 goals out of corner kicks. So, and we all know that, you know, you need to defend that. You need to defend spaces as well. So I showed, what I always did is I prepared, you know, the game in set pieces with, you know, information from the opponent. I saw all the clips. It took me 8 hours to prepare that every game. Then I made up, you know, like what are their strong points? What are their weak points? What is our lineup? What are our strong points and weak points, for example, with corner kicks? And how can we solve that? So I showed like everybody, and then I spoke to Louis, and, you know, he said, okay, I agree, blah, 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 whatever. Then I went to a presentation for the players, and I showed them how physical Crystal Palace was. And that they have to be ready for that. And we went out to practice and we did the same. And we also know that Sergio Romero, for example, is incredibly strong in the air. That's a quality he has. Courtois is incredibly strong in the air. David is good in the air, but not as strong as the other ones. So what you have to do then, and this is also an interesting story. So when I came, I said to David, what are you doing in the weight room? He said, well, I'm working hard because I need to be stronger, especially for, crosses and stuff like that. I said, okay, who is the best in crosses now in the Premier League? And he said, well, I think Courtois and I think Fraser, who played at Southampton, I think at that moment.
Yeah.
So I looked at these two guys and I saw, yes, they are good in crosses, but with corner kicks, they builded them in and they had no chance. They couldn't even leave the goal line. So on the moment you are the best, but you can't even leave. And the referee is not whistling because he allows it. You need to find other solutions. So we found also solutions with that and for that. So the only adaptation, what you can say is you adapt to what is specific in the league. In this case, corner kicks, the referee allows almost everything. And you remember maybe there was a moment they said, hey, if they do this, you give the penalty kick, and then you see they do it for like 4 games, and then it's over again. And that's also the charm of England, in my opinion. Just let them do it. Only if you go internationally, it's a different story. So you have to read how is the referee and how do they allow certain things. And this, I think, is a very good example. You talk about the game, which is the same in the whole world. Sometimes you get more crosses. Sometimes you get more through passes. Sometimes you get more 1 versus 1. Sometimes you have to build more. I just saw an article that in the last game, Barcelona against Mallorca, that Ter Stegen had the most, I think 65 passes, the most they ever counted in a game. So that's the reality. So even in the leagues, things are evolving and are developing. So let the game be the game. And that's the same in the whole world. And that's the beauty also of the game. So focus on the game. And then one of the elements is the referee. And if the referee allows a lot, yeah, you have to play with that. And we know how difficult it is with referees because they now have the VAR. And even then we are discussing it. So the rules, the referee, it's a very important part of the game. You have to read it and you have to act towards that kind of referees and whatever it is.
Perfect, thank you.
No doubt about that. Frans, I wanted to ask about the 2014 World Cup. A fan on the page, Noshirwan, has asked this actually. We all remember how Tim Krul was brought on and Silesen was subbed off in the semi-final. So whose idea was it and how did it happen?
Well, first of all, you know that the head coach is always responsible. So what you are as an assistant coach, and in this case, assistant coach on goalkeeping, but also on the set pieces, what you do is you always think and you try to find solutions. I knew, of course, in the history of the Dutch national team, we have not been so good with penalty kicks, not in offense, not in defense. So the moment we qualified for the World Cup, it was like a concern that I had been thinking about because I am the one who also needs to give, like, you know, the cross to the head coach, and he decides to take it or not to take it. So this goalkeeping or this penalty thing was a thing from the start. You know, when we started to practice in Holland and we knew the squad, we knew the players, we knew the goalkeepers. One of my meetings with them was, hey guys, if we go into penalty kicks, how good are you? And I had, of course, all the statistics behind me, and they didn't know that. But I wanted to know their reaction, how they thought. So Silesen said something, Tim Krul said something, and Michel Vorm said something. So the conclusion was, all three of them were not that good with penalty kicks against. That was the conclusion. So I said, okay, how do you do it now? Well, and they told me how they did it. So I said, so far that's not so successful. They agreed upon it. Okay. That means we need to change something. We need to do it in a different way. So I explained them how I thought that we could and should do it. Also based on the opponent, because listen, if you go in penalty kicks in overtime, there are minimum 5 penalties, but could be more. We all know that maybe the number 1 and 2, they are used to take the penalty kicks, but the rest, it's new. The same for us. You know, the destination is exactly the same. So developing something that the chance that you would, you know, make a save or at least make sure he misses became bigger and bigger. So we worked on that in a certain way throughout the time till that moment. So when we went into the next round, it was something that, you know, that came up, of course, again, and we had been prepared for that all the time. So and then the discussion came. So I discussed that with Louis, and he decided, yes, I think that we should do it. And then you get the process. How are you going to do that? Because you need to know, if you go, for example, to sales and say, hey, when there are penalty kicks, you're out. I knew in his personality, he would not be happy, and it can influence his game. But the same for Tim, who improved a lot in the whole time. If you say it to him, he will be different. You know, he will behave different. So there was a plan there as well, when to say it to who, and also how to follow up on that. So in my opinion, it was a more than logical step, because the history was that Jasper had not a very big and good list by stopping the penalties, which is possible. But the improvement of the 3 goalies in the weeks we were together was the biggest with Krul. And also Krul is impressive. He's very big. It's like a giant. So to make a big impression on the opponent, that helps. And it goes back to when I was playing, because I played professional for Volendam. I was a goalkeeper. I never stopped one goalkeeper till I started to take the penalty kicks. So they wanted me to take the penalty kicks. When I started to take them, I started to score, and I also started to stop them. So there's a logical way of thinking, and I will explain that also how I think about it in the book. Okay, I will have a total explanation there, explaining why and how. So basically, ideas are always coming from different angles. And finally, Louis has to make the decision. And it was an excellent decision in the end. I can't hear you.
Right. Frans, I think, Ismail, I should go next.
Yes.
Yeah, Frans, one question that I have, we've seen in recent years, Iker Casillas, he faded away after around 32, 33 years of age, right? So the same happened with Victor Valdez as well. But Edwin van der Sar played until at the top of his level when he was 40. And we've seen De Gea, he's 28 now, but for the last 18 months, his powers have started to wane also. So do you think that there's a pattern emerging? Do you think that it's because Victor Valdez and Iker Casillas had played a lot of games at a very young age? Because De Gea has also done the same. Like, what do you think is the reason for that?
Well, let us say this. What they all say is that goalkeepers become better when they become older, correct? That's what the whole world says.
Yes.
And then I always ask, what's the reason? A lot of people say, well, because they play a lot of games, so they have a lot of game experience. My reality is that, number one, the older they get, physically they get less. So after your 23rd, you already are building out. So that means somewhere between 20 and 25, 26, physically you are the best. That's like a given. That's like scientifically. The other thing is, and we had a little discussion about that, I think the moment you are practicing integrated with the team, it's like a game. So what you see a lot of times is the goalkeeper is practicing isolated. And now I talk about senior goalkeepers. They work isolated. Well, the question is, of course, what do you practice if you practice isolated? What I did from the start, 85, when I started at Ajax, as much integrated as possible. Why? First of all, I had experience as a goalkeeper myself that I learned most from the games. On the other side, I did have a master's degree in physical education, plus I had a coach license. So this means if I could organize it in a way that they practice together. So for example, a goalkeeper was not good with crosses. I made sure he get a lot of crosses in a certain situation with players. So instead of only the game, because when I was practicing, the assistant coach was heading in some crosses, nobody in my area. I catch the cross and he said, I don't understand it. Here you catch everything and in the game you don't come. And I thought, yeah, I know why I don't come, because in the game it's a lot more complicated. You know, I have my opponents, I have people running in front, I have my defenders. So I found that out pretty quick. So I believe in that way. And if it's not good, you can say, okay, I'll make it a little bit simpler. But what you see happening is they start simple and they say, okay, then we make it more difficult. So I work the other way around. So my opinion is, if they are, and I go back to Valdez and Reina, they were 16, 1997, when I saw them in the under 16 in Barcelona. And I've seen all the goalkeepers, but I saw these two and I think they cannot be that young, because they were impressive physically, but also as goalkeepers. And I said to Louis, I saw two guys from 16. I don't believe they are 16. I said, but you know, I think they are big talents. He said, okay, so make a pathway for them and see what happens. So after a year, they already practiced with the first team. And the first times they practiced with us, that was normally once a week after the game. We played small-sided games. The first 2 months, they were almost crying because they didn't stop one ball. They were 17 years of age. They didn't stop one ball. But I knew now you have to be mentally strong, because when you are strong, you will come back and they cannot destroy you anymore. So, and after the 2 months, they started to make the saves and they started to grow enormously. So I knew that both of them, the same with Edwin van der Sar, with all the goalies I work with, they know the games. They know the situation of the games because they practice the situations a lot. My only question was, how do they behave for 100,000 people? And what I did then is, they came into the game, young, 20, 21, van der Sar 22. And after, you know, like a season, they played as if they were like 40 years of age. So I think you can bring that development age earlier if you know how to deal with them and how to work with them and when to do integrated and how to do with that. So it's an exception. For example, Buffon is an exception. Physically, he can deal with it. He has a lot of experience, but he is an exception. Edwin van der Sar, of course, he was very good at an older age, and many are. But physically, you know, they need almost a week to recover. So that's different than when you are like 20 years of age. And I think the same with players, it should be exceptions. But we need enough young goalkeepers who can take over. And that's also what I would like, you know, that we don't need to go back. There's always an exception of a goalkeeper that is older, that is excellent. And that can be as a mentor or whatever, no problem at all. But in general, you know, like David is now 28. It's ideal. You know, he had a lot of experience. He played a lot of games, had a lot of good moments, bad moments, disappointments, and whatever it is. So that's basically how I think about it.
Right.
I have a very small question. This is also because we're on the topic of David De Gea. Us fans have found that he's a brilliant shot stopper, but he comes up short when it comes to penalties. He leaves a lot to, you know, demanded from him. David De Gea.
Yeah.
He's not very good on penalties. So as a goalkeeping coach, how do you work with players to be better in those situations?
Yeah, well, I think that this is a good one and a funny one, actually. When you have a certain age, you are used to do things in a certain way. Okay? And well, if you're used to that and you believe in it, you think that's the best way to do it. So I tell you a funny story now. So we play, it's the game before we play Crystal Palace in the final. We play in the FA Cup. Do you know still against who?
Thank you so much, Frans.
Say it again?
Everton.
Yes. Okay, what happens is this. We play Everton, and of course we can go into penalty kicks. So I spoke about it with Louis and blah, 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 and I said, okay, what we should do is we played 11 versus 11. We should take all the players, like what happens in Wembley, coming from the middle, go to the place, whistle, kick in, and whatever it is. So, and what I said to David and Romero, I said, listen, guys, what we do is we wait and we react. We don't go too early and we don't gamble. Okay, so what happens is this, we do it like that. De Gea is not stopping one penalty kick. And Romero, I think he is stopping one penalty kick. And every time the penalty kick was there, they were like a little short, but they waited and they reacted. And I gave them every time a comment and a compliment. I said, well done, well done, well done. Why? Because for me, that was the way of doing it, okay? Plus, the penalty has to be perfect, and then it's a goal. And to be honest, I still have it on tape. I can show you, the guys took the penalty kicks almost perfect. Okay, that can happen. And there was no pressure, of course. For the players, there was no pressure because the stadium, but if you are in a stadium with the players, you have pressure. Okay, so, and you know, David felt also a little bit uncomfortable because they made fun out of him. You know how that goes. But we took it as serious as we can. And I said, guys, don't worry. You did a great job. I know it feels strange. If you would have gambled 3 times and you had 1 save, you know, it would, but no, don't do that. Do you still, guys, do you still remember what happened in that game?
Yes, the Romelu Lukaku save.
Say it again?
Of course we do.
Romelu Lukaku save. The
So,
David De
no,
Gea penalty save, yeah.
Who took the penalty?
No, and
Lukaku.
Do you still know who took the penalty kick for Everton?
Lukaku
What did he do? De
on the
Gea,
right side. Right.
he waited and he reacted.
Yes.
So this is an answer to your question. You know, with penalty kicks, whatever you do as a goalkeeper, everything is good. Because if it's a goal, it's a goal. You did what you could, no problem. Everything what an attacker do is pressure. And I believe, and I think, you know, it's measurable. You can do better. For example, I also started Caballero with penalty kicks. Amazing. But the moment he gambles, he is wrong. And the moment he waits and reacts, he's doing a great job. But this is a little bit different way of thinking, which is, in my opinion, logical thinking. And that should be part of, you know, and that's why I look forward to the book, because I can explain things. And, you know, I would love to have the clips to show it. And not everything is a guarantee, but I know for sure the total level is going up, which is step by step.
Yes, absolutely. By the way, when is the book out so we can promote it as well?
You know, we worked for 6 years. I hope it will be end of this year, but definitely start of next year. So it's in the final phase.
Okay, that's great. Hassan?
Yeah, Frans, if I can just, you know, as we go on, it's been so brilliant to listen to you, to hear you talk about the technical stuff that we just don't get an insight into. I want to ask you something as someone who's got so much experience. Can a goalkeeper, in your opinion, is there the right age for a goalkeeper, or can you be world-class at 19 and you can be world-class at 28 also? We saw with Iker Casillas, Daniel brought him up, that he started very early, even though Madrid had good goalkeepers at the time, but they believed in him and they started him early. So do you think that for any side, if there's a young goalkeeper pushing through and he feels he's ready, or the coaches feel he's ready, do you think his age matters? Or if you're good enough, you're old enough?
Well, I think that we have to look always in history, of course, because the history will give you a lot of information. When I look at my history, when I was coaching, then what I saw was actually, I was 17 myself that I made my debut in the pro league, but that was because there was nobody else. So that's a different point of view, and I did, in their opinion, pretty well because I haven't been gone for 12 years. I stayed there. But if I look at when I came to Ajax, Menzo was not too old. He was, I think, like, you know, 24 or something like that. But when you look at Van der Sar, who came in '89 and started to play, you know, like 93, something like that, he was also 22, 23 years of age. And he became, with that team, at that moment, in that way of playing, one of the best in the world. If I look at Barcelona, when I came, they had Victor Bahia, which was, of course, a fantastic goalkeeper, a line goalkeeper. And, well, when I started to search within Barcelona, I found Valdez and Reina, and they started early. But they fall back a little bit, and then they went again. So to give an answer on your question, I think that when you are good enough, you're old enough. Only nowadays the pathway is a little bit different, because when you play in the first team of United, you have to perform. There's no other way. You cannot say, okay, we give you the spot, you know, and you can grow 1 year. In my time, that was still a little bit possible. Now it's impossible. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that the people you have and the goalkeepers you have are as maximum prepared on their job as possible. And of course, you learn from games. You know, I can do almost everything in the practice, but of course the game, that's the best way to practice, but also to develop it. So my experience is that when you're good enough, you're old enough, but what you see in reality is that they do need games to become at a certain level. And to play in the second team is not the same as when you play at the first team. To play for Sheffield is not the same as to play for Man United, if you know what I mean. So there's not a certain age. There is a certain experience before you come and try to stay there.
Thank you.
No doubt. Okay, so Frans, I only have one small question before we end.
Yes.
You spoke about personal relationships and their relationship should be trustworthy. So how good is your relationship with Louis van Gaal?
Well, that's of course a little bit, you need to know the story. When I was at Ajax 85, Cruyff signed me. So I was there 85, 86, 87, 89 came Louis van Gaal in the club as a youth coach. And I actually have been teaching him in the federation. So he was, you know, I was in the federation for the highest course. I was a guest teacher and I was teaching him while he was at Ajax. So we grew basically in Ajax, and I was already with the first team. He came up in the first team as an assistant. I think it was 91. And then from assistant, he became the head coach. And then to go on, 1997, he went to Barcelona. I went with him to Barcelona. He left Barcelona in 2000. I stayed actually. And that's also the reason was Louis wanted a sabbatical. And I said, Louis, I can't take a sabbatical. For me, it's impossible. So he said, Barcelona wants to keep you, so sign. And then after a year, you know, I want to choose a new club and then you can decide if you want to come. Well, I stayed in Barcelona for 3 years. The third year, Louis came back actually as a coach. Then I didn't work with Louis for like 7, 8 years. So I worked with other coaches. Then we worked together again in Bayern München. From that, we worked together with the national team, of course. And then we worked together at United. So I worked quite some years with Louis, but also a lot of years not with Louis. So my relationship with Louis is that, in my opinion, the way he works is that I like the way he works, especially for me as an assistant, because we have a very good, let I say, professional understanding as well. You know, he also has a master's degree in physical education. It's the same for me. That means, you know, it's interesting to discuss about some things. So we have, like, over the years, we developed a very good relationship, mainly professional. What you see a lot of times in the game, that there's friendly relationships, which in my opinion is very difficult. You need to have a very good professional relationship. And when you have that, you know, you can be on a personal base, more or less. But we have an excellent professional relationship. And I think that's the only thing what matters if you work together.
Okay, so as you know in football that they say that if you don't shoot, then you will never score. I'm going to shoot and ask you if you can ask Van Gaal to come on our show.
Well, I cannot do anything with his agenda or whatever it is. So
Yes.
that will be very hard, I think, but you never know. So you send me a mail, and then I
Yes.
will send the mail to him, and then you will see what happens afterwards.
Okay, that's fantastic. Hopefully
But
he
what I
agrees
want
as
to
well.
say to you guys is that I told you a little bit in the beginning, it's amazing how big United is worldwide. It is really, with fan bases and stuff like that, and people connected to the club, the biggest in the world. And what I want to say is that I never realized that till I was there. And I went for United to Hong Kong, for some sponsor activities and some technical things. And I found out how big it was. I experienced it. So I think that United should be very proud with people like you, and also do all the work that you can to be positive for the club. I think that's fantastic. I also want to say the loyalty that I experienced of the United supporters, the 2 years we were there, it's amazing. I listen, if I'm a supporter, I go to a club, I want to see them win and I want to see them spectacular. Well, to be honest, in the 2 years that we were there, it was not always spectacular. So I could feel that the supporters were not having the fun that they would like to have, but they were always behind the team, always. So talking about the fan base, what I experienced there, they are fantastic and they support the team also at the moments when it doesn't go the way they want to go. So I want to give a big compliment to everybody, who is a fan connected to United, because that's really a value that they have developed over the years that you cannot compare with any other team in the world. So a big compliment for you guys, and fantastic.
Martial scored late.
Keep on going.
Yeah, thank you. It just
It's
it's
been a
amazing.
pleasure and an honor, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. Good luck and keep
Thanks
doing
a
the
lot.
good job, okay?
Thank you so much, Franz. Take
You
care of
too.
yourself.
Thank you.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.